let's start with just sort of a couple of practical questions as we move into this. The fact that this is supposed to start on April 15th, jury selection is supposed to start then. What's the over-under on that? Do you believe we're actually going to see this trial start April 15th?
I think so, and I think the judge thinks so as well. One of his parting words to everybody in the courtroom was, "See you on the 15th." Even though the Trump attorneys did say they're going to try one more last-ditch effort to say that they want to postpone it, it doesn't look like it's going to be postponed. I think we're going to all be here together on tax day, April 15th,
yes,
when they open for jury selection.
Tax day, also Patriots Day in Massachusetts. Very important for the marathon. Donald Trump said today he would testify. This is not the first time that we've heard that from Donald Trump. If you're his attorney, Ryan, would you put the former president on the stand?
I would advise him mightily not to do that, because generally speaking, defendants do not go on the stand. But he's not a very good witness, or he wouldn't be a very good witness in the box. He seemed a bit out of control when he was in the deposition for E. Jean Carroll, as one example. There's actually an adverse finding against him in the civil fraud trial when he did testify, saying that he wasn't credible. So the idea that he would go forward in this trial, I don't think is a good idea. And if anything, it could actually cement some of the evidence that the prosecutors need to prove and might have difficulty proving without his testimony. So I think he would even hand them something.
Eric, you have followed so much of this so closely. You've spent a whole lot of time in courtrooms covering Donald Trump. The fact that this judge today was so clearly irritated and really called out Donald Trump's legal team, right? That they couldn't cite case law. They didn't have anything essentially to back up these very serious allegations. Based on what you've seen from Donald Trump's legal team, does it surprise you that they got to that moment in the courtroom where the judge said, you really should have been better prepared here?
No, it really doesn't surprise me, only because we've seen this sort of thing happen in the earlier trials that we've had so far with the E. Jean Carroll defamation case, the New York Attorney General case, his lawyers clashing with the judges at times, especially when Trump has been on the witness stand. So it actually is not too surprising. His lawyers like to show him that they're earning their money by making these arguments. They made a big deal last week about saying that this evidence had been handed over too late. Why had this happened? The judge today said to them, when did you request this evidence? When did you subpoena it? Why didn't you do it months ago? The implication sort of being that this delay strategy might have been intentional or at least that they were at fault. And the judge obviously shot it down.
Part of that in shooting it down, too, is also calling out one of Donald Trump's attorneys, saying, hey, you're a former federal prosecutor. And I'm obviously paraphrasing here. And this is how you're presenting things, and this is the work you've done. That, I think, says a lot and also raises questions for people about what can we expect from this judge at trial? It's
a great question. And just to put the record straight on, like the judge already had a trial. He was the judge in the Trump Organization criminal trial and widely respected for the way in which he manages the courtroom. And in fact, Alan Weisselberg, Trump's former CFO, said of Judge Merchan that he showed them the utmost respect, understood their role as advocates. So this is a judge who is even-keeled, doesn't lose it in any sense. And here he was obviously quite upset very much with the lawyers and how they were making claims that were outrageous in a certain sense, needed to be supported because of how exceptionally they were criticizing the prosecutors. Basically saying the prosecutors are engaged in a conspiracy of hiding evidence from them without any support. So I think this is a remarkable setting of the table for the trial by the judge who's well respected for being able to control this room.
Ryan Eric, stay with us. I also want to bring in now, we have Mimi Rocah, who's with us, the DA in Westchester County, New York, also former division chief for the SDNY. And Mimi, you know Todd Blanche very well. You worked together. Was it surprising at all to you to see your former colleague called out in that way?
Well, I think it was appropriate. As Ryan, I think, explained, the defense here went beyond just saying, hey, we got a lot of documents and we need time to go through them, which of course is an appropriate argument, and prosecutors always should be as transparent as possible and turn things over. But he really, the defense team, really accused, I think unfairly, based on what the judge said today, the prosecutors of misconduct. And that's so serious. I mean, for any lawyer, but particularly prosecutors. And to throw that around in a way that, according to the judge, was not warranted. This judge, who really calls balls and strikes, said, in fact, I think the DA's office here seems to have gone above and beyond. In other words, they not only fulfilled their obligations under the law, but they went beyond that. And so I was not surprised in that sense, because I think that is part of a judge's job, is to sort of police, if you will, the rhetoric and accusations that get thrown around in heated cases like this.
Mimi, I'm going to stick with you for a minute because I want to get your take too on what we saw from the appeals court today. So reducing this judgment to $175 million for that bond. I also found it interesting that the order basically said that there had been an order barring Donald Trump and his sons from running a business in New York, also from obtaining a loan from a financial institution in the state of New York. They put a pause on that. Was that surprising at all to you, that stay?
I mean, no, in the sense that appeals courts do, in general, things to preserve the status quo as much as possible until the merits of the case are ruled on. I mean, probably everyone who's been following these cases knows that by now because we've seen that in other cases as well. But that's kind of a tried and true principle of appellate courts to preserve the status quo as much as possible. And because once there is harm, once there to a party, it's harder, you can't undo it. And so they try to sort of hold things in place. And I obviously don't know why they did what they did, but I know it is consistent with that principle of appellate courts.
There's been some talk about the number, too, that we got to. So it was $464 million, this bond, reduced to $175 million, which means that it is unlikely Donald Trump will have to sell any of his properties, that anything will need to be seized, a 60% reduction from the appeals court. Did that surprise you?
It surprised me a little bit, and it's now we're trying to read the tea leaves of what that might mean on the part of the appeals court. So it might mean
they didn't give us much information. It was about a paragraph.
Yes, there's no accompanying opinion. So it's just they told us how they ruled. And I think that it could be that they are a bit skeptical of Judge Engoron's ruling in terms of how much he found that needs to be disgorged from Trump's companies. So it's not about the underlying ruling of systematic fraud, but it might be that the scope, the $464 million, might be to them too high. So it's better to just choose a lower number going into the appeals process.
Eric, could that be seen as a setback for the AG?
It's definitely a setback for the Attorney General today. This is not what they wanted to have happen. They had told the appeals court that if Trump was not forced to post the entire bond, that there was a risk that he wouldn't pay the award if his appeal failed, that he just simply could not be trusted. And they were very adamant about that. They wanted 120% of the judgment put up front in order for him to appeal. So it is a big setback for the Attorney General. I think they probably are perhaps making peace with it and ready to move on. But it also remains to be seen whether Trump will actually post the bond. He did say he will, but he also has to follow through on that, and he has 10 days to do so.
Well, I know we're all waiting for the next 10 days, so we'll be watching for that. Eric, Ryan, Mimi, really appreciate all being with us tonight. Thank you.